In 2017, the world met a shy, 12-year-old girl from Oklahoma City on the America's Got Talent stage. She was clutching a puppet, a fluffy, pink-eared rabbit named Petunia. What happened next was a real-life fairy tale. That night, Darci Lynne Farmer didn't just get a golden buzzer, she captured the heart of an entire nation. She went on to win the whole season, becoming a household name overnight. Her victory was seen as the ultimate triumph, a sweet, talented kid who conquered her shyness to achieve an impossible dream. The confetti fell, the $1 million prize was hers, and her future seemed brighter than anyone could imagine. But what happens when the cheering stops? What happens when the fairy tale ends and the cold, hard reality of the entertainment industry kicks in? This is the story of what comes after the dream comes true. It's not a story of a big scandal or a public meltdown, but of a quieter, more sneaky kind of tragedy. It's the story of the crushing pressure put on a child star, the struggle to grow up with the whole world watching, and the silent battle to avoid being frozen in time, forever seen as the 12-year-old girl with the puppets. This is the story you haven't heard, the one that shows how a dream can turn into a gilded cage, and how the biggest win can lead to the toughest fight of all. This is the heartbreaking tragedy of Darci Lynne. One moment, she was on top of the world, the most voted for winner in the show's history, a pint-sized powerhouse who basically revived the art of ventriloquism for a new generation. Her tour sold out in minutes, pulling in over $5 million. She even had her own NBC Christmas special. The world was at her feet. But behind the curtain, a totally different story was playing out. A story of pressure, expectations, and a quiet struggle against the very thing that made her famous. The tragedy isn't what happened in the spotlight. It's what the spotlight threatened to snuff out, her chance to grow up, to change, and to become more than just a memory of a 12-year-old phenom. Before the international fame and sold-out arenas, there was just a girl from Oklahoma with a secret. Darci Lynne Farmer was, as she and her parents have said, painfully shy. She loved to sing, but the idea of doing it in front of people was terrifying. It was a classic case of a huge voice trapped by fear. Her parents, Clark and Misty Farmer, encouraged her to enter talent-based pageants, not for the crowns, but just to help her build some confidence. It was at one of these pageants that her life completely changed course. She saw a teenage ventriloquist, Lisa Bonaquisti, and was absolutely mesmerized. Watching someone command a stage, singing and telling jokes while technically hidden behind a character, was a lightbulb moment. For a shy girl who desperately wanted to perform, it was the perfect solution, a way to be heard without having to be fully seen. The idea sparked an obsession. She begged her parents for a puppet, but at first, they were hesitant. Darci was already an elite gymnast training 30 hours a week, and they couldn't imagine her taking on another complex skill, but Darci wouldn't give up. She practiced in the bathroom, copying routines she saw online. Finally, for her 10th birthday, her parents gave in and bought her a puppet off eBay. That's all it took. With help from ventriloquism coach Gary Owen, who was so impressed he offered to manage her career, her natural talent just exploded. Only 1 month after getting her first puppet, she entered a local talent show, Edmonds Got Talent, and won first place. The next year, she was winning state-level competitions. She wasn't just a shy girl anymore, she was a performer finding her power. Then came America's Got Talent in 2017. On May 30th, walking onto that huge stage, she looked small and nervous, every bit the 12-year-old she was. But the second she opened her mouth, or rather, Petunia's mouth, to sing a breathtaking version of Summertime, everything changed. The performance was technically perfect, showing off a skill that takes most adults decades to master. But it was more than that. It was the mix of her incredible voice, the witty banter with the puppet, and her own genuine charm. Judge Melby was so blown away she slammed her golden buzzer, sending Darci straight to the live shows. Simon Cowell later admitted he thought it was impossible, that she couldn't have been the one singing without moving her mouth, her run on the show was a cultural event. Each performance was a masterclass. With her mouse puppet, Oscar, she gave a soulful performance of Who's Lovin' You. With her flirty elderly puppet, Edna, she serenaded Simon Cowell with You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, making the famously tough judge blush. For her final performance, she brought out two puppets, Petunia and Oscar, for a stunning duet of the Beatles, with a little help from my friends. Simon Cowell boldly predicted, I think you're going to win. He was right. During the finale, after a memorable duet with the legendary ventriloquist and AGT Season 2 winner Terry Fator, Darci Lynne was crowned the champion. She was a millionaire, a Las Vegas headliner, and one of the most famous kids in the world, all at just 12 years old. She had done more than just win a talent show, she had, as many people pointed out, revived a dying art form for a whole new generation. It was the perfect end to a perfect fairy tale. The dream was real. But as anyone who's lived in the public eye knows, the end of the fairy tale is often just the beginning of a much more complicated story. The day after she won, Darci Lynne woke up to a life that was completely unrecognizable. The shy girl from Oklahoma was now a global star. The victory lap was instant and intense. She appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres Show, headlined her own sold-out national tour, Darci Lynne and Friends Live, and starred in her own NBC holiday special, My Hometown Christmas. Her first tour sold out dates in just 6 minutes and reportedly grossed over $5.2 million. And she was juggling all of this while still in middle school. On the surface, it was a dream. But underneath it all, the machine of fame was starting to grind, bringing with it a set of invisible, yet incredibly powerful, pressures. This wasn't a nightmare of public scandal, but the quiet, creeping tragedy of expectation, the tragedy of the golden handcuffs, the very thing that made her a star, her unique, charming, family-friendly ventriloquism, was now becoming a box. The world fell in love with Darci Lynne, the 12-year-old singing ventriloquist. And that's exactly what the world wanted her to be, forever. Every performance, every interview, every appearance was built around the puppets. Petunia, Oscar, and Edna weren't just props, they were co-stars with their own fans. While this was the heart of her brand, it created this massive, unspoken pressure to stick to the formula. The industry and the audiences who bought tickets had an expectation. They paid to see the girl with the puppets, not just Darci Lynne, the singer. This is a classic trap for child stars. Think of Macaulay Culkin, forever the kid from Home Alone, or Gary Coleman, who spent his entire life trying to be seen as anyone other than Arnold from Diff'rent Strokes. Their first success becomes an identity so strong that any attempt to change is met with resistance. For Darci, this meant her own artistic identity was completely tied to her puppets. And while she loved them, she had other dreams. She loved singing by herself, writing her own music, and acting. But how do you introduce your real self when the world is in love with your characters? How do you grow up when your success depends on you staying the same? The pressure became more obvious when she returned to the AGT stage for the Champions and Fantasy League spin-offs. In 2019, on America's Got Talent, The Champions, she came back as a giant of the franchise. The pressure, she admitted, was insane. Competing against the best of the best, she finished as the runner-up, a huge achievement, but the expectation was for her to win. But it was her appearance on America's Got Talent, Fantasy League in 2024 that really exposed the central conflict of her career. Now 19 years old, she made a very bold choice. She walked out on stage alone, holding a guitar, and performed an original song she'd written called Push Our Luck. No puppets. It was just Darci. She called it Darci 2.0, her attempt to show the world who she was now. The performance was powerful and heartfelt, but the judges' reaction said it all. Heidi Klum pointed out the risk. Now you fall into the category of all the singers, so the pressure, I feel like, is extra. The message was clear. without the puppets, she was just another singer in a sea of them. Her unique selling point was gone. And even though she was praised for her courage, she didn't make it to the finals. In an interview, she made sure to clarify her intentions. "I am not quitting ventriloquism and throwing away the puppets," she explained. "I am kind of just opening another door." But that's the core of the tragedy. The industry often doesn't like it when its stars open new doors. It likes the ones it already knows how to sell. The heartbreaking part isn't failure, it's the fight to be seen as a whole person, an evolving artist, instead of just a successful product. This struggle is made harder by the simple fact of growing up. Puberty is awkward for everyone, but Darci had to go through it on a national stage. Her voice changed, her looks changed, and she had to navigate the shift from a cute kid to a young woman, all while keeping up a grueling tour schedule. A normal childhood just wasn't in the cards. While her friends were going to school dances, she was headlining in Las Vegas. While they were figuring out who they were in private, she was doing it in front of millions of followers. This isn't about being ungrateful. By all accounts, Darci has handled the spotlight with incredible grace. But it's about a system that often chews up and spits out its young stars. The history of child stardom is filled with stories of burnout and identity crises. Darci Lynne's tragedy is this exact process. It's the silent fight against typecasting, the pressure to live up to the memory of a 12-year-old, and the battle to forge her own path as a musician and actress. She won the biggest prize on TV, but that victory came with golden handcuffs, a beautiful but restrictive set of expectations she's spent every year since trying to gently unlock. Faced with the weight of global fame and the golden cage of her own success, a lot of young stars might have buckled. But this is where the story of Darci Lynne's tragedy turns into a story of quiet, steady resilience. Instead of being defined by her past, she started building a future, piece by piece, on her own terms. She didn't ditch the puppets, she just started building a stage big enough for them and for herself. Her evolution started almost right away, but it was subtle. While still touring with her ventriloquism show, she began making space for her other talents. The first big step was into acting. In 2018, she did a voice role in the animated series Fancy Nancy. But she soon moved to on-screen roles. Her first feature film was the 2022 Netflix movie, A Cowgirl's Song. In it, she co-starred with veteran actress Cheryl Ladd and not only acted but also wrote a song for the soundtrack called Just Breathe. This was a huge move. It was a platform to show off her original music and tie her new identity as a singer-songwriter directly to a project. She kept going with a role in the 2024 biopic Reagan, where she played a girl rescued by a young Ronald Reagan when he was a lifeguard. It was a small part, but appearing in a major film with Dennis Quaid was another big step in establishing herself as a working actress, separate from her AGT persona. These roles were smart, letting her build a filmography and get experience without the pressure of carrying a whole movie. She was learning, growing, and most importantly, showing everyone she had ambitions beyond the ventriloquism stage. At the same time, the most personal part of her evolution was her journey into music. This is the clearest expression of Darci 2.0. For years, she'd been performing covers, perfectly sung through her puppets. Now, she wanted to find her own voice. She started writing her own music, a process she described as one of her biggest dreams. In early 2024, she took that massive leap on the AGT, Fantasy League stage with Push Our Luck. But that was just the start. She's continued to release her own singles, each one a deliberate step in a new direction. She's proving that she's not just an interpreter anymore, she's a creator, telling her own story. She even produced the music video for Push Our Luck, which won an award from the Los Angeles Film Awards for Best Music Video in 2024. At just 19, she was no longer just the talent, she was becoming the boss of her own career. What makes Darci's journey so interesting is how smart she is about it. She knows the tightrope she's walking. In a 2024 interview, she admitted her act had to mature as she did. She reassured her fans that she'd keep her material family-friendly but that it would grow up with her. She also said she'd love to have her own variety show one day, like Carol Burnett, a format that would let her use every part of her talent, the puppets, the singing, the comedy, the acting. It's a brilliant vision that doesn't throw away her past but makes it part of something bigger. She hasn't abandoned her roots. She still performs at iconic venues like the Grand Ole Opry and headlines tours that cleverly mix her puppets with her solo music. She hasn't kicked Petunia to the curb, she's just invited Darci to share the spotlight. This isn't a story of a child star rebelling against their past. It's a story of a remarkably savvy and resilient young woman who, after being handed a fairy tale, decided she was strong enough to write the sequel herself. The so-called tragedy of being typecast is being met with a relentless and creative push forward, proving that her greatest talent might just be her ability to evolve. Darci Lynne's journey is a powerful reminder of the pressure on young performers. But what do you think? Is it fair for us to expect our favorite child stars to never change? Or is their evolution a necessary part of their art? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you find these stories about the realities of fame interesting, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. So, is the story of Darci Lynne Farmer really a tragedy? Not in the way you might think. There was no fiery crash, no public meltdown, none of the dark stuff that's become a sad cliché for so many child stars. The tragedy is quieter and way more complicated. It's the tragedy of a culture that loves youth but then punishes it for the crime of growing up. It's the heartbreaking pressure of being famous for one thing, and the lonely fight to prove you're so much more. When Darci Lynne won America's Got Talent, she was handed a perfect story, the shy girl who found her voice through puppets. For years, she played that part perfectly, bringing joy to millions and breathing new life into a classic art form. But as she grew from a child into a young woman, she ran straight into the unspoken rule of her fame, that she should stay frozen in time, forever the 12-year-old prodigy from our TV screens. The real story of Darci Lynne isn't about being a victim, it's about incredible strength. Her journey since winning has been a masterclass in how to survive post-reality show fame. She has deliberately refused to become a nostalgia act. Through her acting roles and, more importantly, through her evolution as a singer-songwriter, she has been carefully building a new identity. It's an identity that honors her past but refuses to be chained to it. Her performance on AGT, Fantasy League, standing alone with her guitar, wasn't just a risky choice, it was a declaration of independence. It was her telling the world that she's not just the keeper of the puppets, but an artist in her own right, with her own stories to tell and her own songs to sing. The heartbreaking truth is that the fame machine isn't built for growth, it's built for repetition. What Darci Lynne has done is resist that machine, not by fighting it, but by outsmarting it. Her story teaches us a powerful lesson about the price of fame. The biggest challenge isn't winning the prize, but winning the right to define yourself long after the confetti is gone. Darci Lynne started as a girl who used a puppet to find her voice. Now, she's a young woman using her own voice to build her future. And that's not a tragedy, that's the ultimate triumph.